Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 7, Indra offends his spiritual master, verse number 34. This has no purport, I'll read by myself. Shri Rishiruvacha, I'll read by myself. Abhyarthita suraganehi paurahitya mahatapaha sa vishwarupasthanaha prasanna shlakshnaya gira. Translation. Shukdev Goswami continued, when all the demigods requested the great Vishwarupa to be their priest, Vishwarupa, who was advanced in austerities, was very pleased. He replied to them as follows. Verse number 35. We will repeat. Shri Vishwarupa Vacha Vigarhitam Dharmashiler Vigarhitam Dharmashiler Brahmavarcha Upavyayam Katham nu madvidho natha Lokesherabhiyachitam Pratyakhyasati tashishya Saiva Swartha Uchyate. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Sri Vishwarupa said, O demigods, although the acceptance of priesthood is described as causing the loss of previously acquired Brahminical power, how can someone like me refuse to accept your personal request? You are all exalted commanders of the entire universe. I am your disciple and must take many lessons from you. Therefore, I cannot refuse you. I must agree for my own benefit. Purport. The professions of a qualified Brahmana are Pathan, Pathan, Yajan, Yajan, Dana, Pratigraha. The words Yajan and Yajan mean that a Brahmana becomes the priest of the populace for the sake of their elevation. One who accepts the post of spiritual master neutralizes the sinful reactions of the Yajman, the one on whose behalf he performs the yagna. Thus, the results of the pious acts previously performed by the priest or spiritual master are diminished. Therefore, priesthood is not accepted by learned Brahmanas. Nevertheless, the greatly learned Brahmana Vishwarupa became the priest of the demigods because of his profound respect for them. I'll read the next verse also. There is some that flow is continuing. Read by myself. Verse number 36. Akinchananam hi dhanam shilochanam teneha nirvartita sadhu satkriyah katham vigarhyam nu karomi adhishvaraha pauro dasam hrishyati yena durmatihi. Translation. O exalted governors of various planets, the true Brahmana who has no material possession maintains himself by the profession of accepting silochana. In other words, he picks up grains left in the field and on the ground in the wholesale marketplace. By this means, householder Brahmanas who actually abide by the principles of austerity and penance maintain themselves and their families and perform all necessary pious activities. A Brahmana who desires to achieve happiness by gaining wealth through professional priesthood must certainly have a very low mind. How shall I accept such priesthood? Purport. A first class Brahmana does not accept any rewards from his disciple or yajmans. Practicing austerities and penances, he instead goes to the agricultural fields and collects food grains left by the agriculturalists to be collected by the Brahmanas. Similarly, such Brahmanas go to the marketplace where the grains are purchased and sold wholesale, and there they collect grains left by the merchants. In this way, such exalted Brahmanas maintain their bodies and families. Such priests never demand anything from their disciples to live in opulence, imitating Kshatriyas or Vaishyas. In other words, a pure Brahmana voluntarily accepts a life of poverty and lives in complete dependence on the mercy of the Lord. Not very many years ago, a Brahmana in Krishnanagara near Navadvipa was offered some help from the local zamindar Raja Krishna Chandra. The Brahmana refused to accept the help. He said that since he was very happy in his household life, taking rice given by his disciples and cooking vegetables of tamarind leaves, there was no question of taking help from the zamindar. The conclusion is that although a Brahmana may receive many opulence from his disciples, may receive much opulence from his disciples, he should not utilize the rewards of his priesthood for his personal benefit. He must use them for the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this chapter, Indra offends his spiritual master, Brihaspati. We saw how Indra, when Brihaspati came to the assembly where the king of the heaven, Indra, was seated in his royal opulence on his throne, Brihaspati, his spiritual master, enters that assembly of all the devatas, and Indra, becoming puffed up with his opulence, his wealth, his kingly name and fame, he did not pay respect to Brihaspati, and so he offends his spiritual master Brihaspati. That is the title of the chapter, and that was a serious offense on part of Indra, a disciple disrespecting his spiritual master. And so Brihaspati leaves the assembly, and all the mercy and all the blessings of Brihaspati, the spiritual master, that was upon all the devatas, Indra and all the devatas, ceases. It stops. And so the result was Indra and all the devatas put together were defeated by the demons. The demons had their spiritual master, Shukracharya. So Indra offends his spiritual master, but on the other hand, Shukracharya was very pleased with his disciples, although they were demons, and by that they were able to gain victory over the kingdom of heaven, over Indra. So so this lesson shows that no matter who you are, the blessings of the spiritual master is very, very essential in life. Even the demons, by having the blessings of their spiritual master, could conquer the devatas. So after this, the Indra and all of them lost their possessions, lost their wealth, opulence, kingdoms. So they go to Lord Brahma, and Brahma chastises them. Indra, you've acted very foolishly, very offensively. And so now the next, because Brihaspati is gone, so they need a spiritual master. So that the spiritual master will conduct sacrifices, and then they will, by the austerity and by the penance of the spiritual master and by the blessings of the spiritual master, Indra and all the devatas will win back their kingdom. So Brahma tells Indra, go and accept Vishwarupa as your spiritual master to perform sacrifices, so that by the strength of the sacrifices that Vishwarupa performs, the new spiritual master, you will be able to win back the kingdom. This is the background. And so in the last few verses, we saw how Indra and all the Devatas come and they praise Vishwarupa and they glorify Vishwarupa, because now Vishwarupa is supposed to become their spiritual master. So how is Vishwarupa going to accept that he is going to become the spiritual master? You have to glorify the spiritual master. Vishwarupa should feel that the demigods want me. So the Devatas have all gone and glorified Vishwarupa. Now the interesting thing here is that Vishwarupa is younger to all the Devatas. So the Devatas knew that Vishwarupa will hesitate to become the spiritual master, because generally spiritual master is an elderly person, elder to the person who is going to be the disciple. But Vishwarupa, because he is glorified and he sees that the demigods are paying respects to him, so in these two verses he says, so verse number 35 and 36, two different things are mentioned. Vishwarupa is saying in verse number 35, he says, how can someone like me refuse to accept your personal request of becoming your spiritual master? So he is accepting it. And verse number 36, he says, how can I accept such a priesthood? So it's a very interesting thing. So basically here Prabhupada is explaining in these two verses that being young was, okay, he was young, but he was qualified. So even if someone is younger to you, and if you see that he is having certain qualifications by which you can gain, you should not hesitate to approach that person, because he is qualified. So the Devatas did not hesitate to approach Vishwarupa, although he was younger, but he was qualified. And not just that, Brahma himself had told Indra that go and accept Vishwarupa because he is qualified. And why is he qualified? Because of his austerities. So there is some purity in him. So Indra goes and accepts Vishwarupa. But now Vishwarupa is explaining nicely the situation. Vishwarupa is saying that if I have to accept becoming your spiritual master, and this is, like a priesthood kind of a spiritual master, then I am going to lose all that I have gained by my past austerities and by my past tapasya penances. So, if somebody becomes a spiritual master and is deciding to take charge of a particular disciple, then the spiritual master agrees to nullify the sinful reactions of the disciple by his strength and by his spiritual potency, by his spiritual power. So here it is mentioned that becoming a spiritual master is not an ordinary thing. We must have sufficient strength, sufficient potency, otherwise I am going to lose my acquired piety. So Vishwarupa is saying that this is, but why is he losing? Nobody would like to lose, because he is gaining something material from his disciples. Because he has agreed to rid the disciples of the disciples' share of papa, so he'll be gaining, and so because he's accepted that, the disciples are being freed from the share of papa by he taking on the papa, the papa karma on him, so the disciples will sufficiently reward him materially. So this is called a priesthood. And here Prabhupada explains, and which Vishwarupa is also explaining, this is not, an exalted Brahmana will not do such a thing. This is an ordinary Brahmana, a Brahmana who has material desires. He's not really a genuine Brahmana, but just like in the society today, it is an accepted fact that a Brahmana comes and does puja on your behalf, and then he blesses you with all the some piety. And how does he do that? On his strength, on his purity, on his power, on because of his austerity. So he's also, and you are rewarding him. So this is like a transactional exchange between a disciple and a devotee and a Brahmana. It should not happen like that. A real Brahmana is different. And so who is a real Brahmana is mentioned here. There are three things that is mentioned here. Three qualifications of a genuine Brahmana. The first qualification that is mentioned is akinchananam. Akinchana means of persons who have taken to austerities and penance to become detached from material possessions. Akinchana means he has no material desires. That if I am going to, I am going to perform something for the benefit of someone so that I get benefited. No. Akinchana means his only desire is to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and is completely free from all material desires, completely dispossessed of all material desires. So that is qualification one, akinchananam, no material possessions. The second qualification of a first-class Brahmana, of a genuine Brahmana, Prabhupada mentions, is that he practices austerities and penances, tapasya. Unless and until a Brahmana practices tapasya, he will not become sufficiently purified to be able to occupy that post of a Brahmana. And the third qualification that is mentioned here, a Brahmana lives his life in complete dependence on the mercy of the Lord. These are the three qualifications mentioned. So, in the previous verse, Prabhupada also talks about the six, what does a Brahmana do? Pathan, yajan, yajan, dana, pratigraha. These are the six things that a Brahmana is supposed to do. Pathan means he himself is well versed in the Vedic scriptures, and Pathan, not only he is well versed in the Vedic scriptures, but it is his duty to make others also well versed in the Vedic scriptures so that they also realize the goal of life. They also understand what this human life is meant for. That is Pathan. Yajan. Yajan means he worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead and teaches others also to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How to render devotional service to Lord Krishna. And the third is Dana Pratigraha. Dana means he gives dana, and because he is giving dana, pratigraha, he can accept charity from others. He gives charity, he accepts charity. Prabhupada writes in one place that a Brahmana, even if he gets a charity of 1 lakh rupees, he's always a beggar. He got 1 lakh rupees, but he's still a beggar? Yeah, because the moment he gets the money, he's immediately supposed to spend in charity. Charity is specifically aimed towards glorifying the Supreme Lord Vishnu or serving the Supreme Lord. That is why a Brahmana is always a beggar. So, a Brahmana, the first qualification is akinchana. Namo akinchana vittaya. Kunti Maharani is praying, Namo akinchana vittaya. He is akinchana, he has no material possession. But actually there is, in this material world, all these material possessions are only going to entangle us. It's not going to liberate us. So a Brahmana is intelligent. He thinks material possessions, they're actually not, actually material possessions for a genuine Brahmana is a curse, because that can get him attached to the material world. But a Brahmana has to possess something. We cannot be free from anything. We need to possess something. How does he become akinchana? Because the Supreme Lord Vishnu, Supreme Lord Krishna is his possession. Namo akinchana vittaya. Vittaya means property. He's akinchana, he has no property, but akinchana, when he becomes akinchana, Krishna becomes his property. Otherwise, he's akinchana. So here, that verse, that famous verse that Prabhupada very frequently quotes, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavat akinchana, sarver gunes tatra samasate suraha, harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna, manorathena sati dhavato bahihi. So, it is so nice to practice this, that I want to become akinchana, I want to become nishkinchana, because the gain is so great. We are thinking that if we get some material possessions or some property, some wealth or some material belongings for gratifying my senses, that is a great gain. No, that is, even logically speaking, it makes no sense to have material possessions, because by not having material possessions, you are gaining much more than by actually having material possessions. How are you gaining much more by not having material possessions? Number one, Krishna becomes your possession. You possess Krishna. Namo akinchana vrittaya. Kunti Maharani is again praying, Janmaishwarya shruta shribhir edha mana madhav puman naivarhyatavi dhatume tvam akinchana gocharam. Again she is saying, tvam akinchana gocharam. Krishna becomes the property of one who is akinchana. So number one, you'll get Krishna. If you get Krishna, you get everything. What do you want more? And the other thing that is mentioned here in this verse, if we become akinchana, we are all supposed to be Brahmanas. If we become akinchana, then all the good qualities will reside in us. All the yasyasti bhaktir bhagavat akinchana sarver gunes tatra samasate suraha. What kind of guna will come? What kind of guna you will possess? Sarver gunes tatra. All the good qualities. Good qualities of the devatas, of the demigods. You name any quality. We have all had experience how difficult it is to inculcate one good quality, isn't it? Being completely forgiving, being very tolerant, being very humble, being very truthful, being very compassionate. It's very difficult. One good quality, to possess it in completeness is so difficult. Here it is said that for one who has become akinchana and who is worshipping the Supreme Lord Vishnu, all the good qualities will automatically manifest in him without any extra endeavor. See what a great gain it is. How does all these good qualities come in him? Because he's become a devotee of Lord Vishnu, is completely enlightened. And because Vishnu, Lord Krishna, samasta guna gana dhama, Krishna is samasta guna gana, the sum total of all guna. Dhama, he's the reservoir, Lord Krishna. So once you become a devotee of Lord Krishna, by becoming akinchana, by becoming nishkinchana, all the good qualities of Krishna will also come in us. Automatically, without any endeavor. Just like Prabhupada gives the example. If there is darkness in the room, it is so difficult. In darkness you cannot see anything, you cannot do anything. Nothing you can do in a room that is dark. You just have to sit and do nothing. But the moment light comes inside the room, darkness gone. Everything is revealed automatically. So, a devotee is supposed to be akinchana. And Prabhupada gives a nice example. When you become akinchana, what kind of good qualities? All kinds, even material. Not just being compassionate, being humble, being austere, being truthful, all these things, all even material intelligence will come. How to manage things for Krishna. That will also, so Prabhupada gives the example of Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami was a young boy. He was a devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when he was a young boy, he was a grihastha. And there was some misunderstanding between the Muslim governor who was collecting the taxes and his father and uncle. So his father and uncle, his family members, they were collecting taxes of about 12 lakh rupees a month during those days. And somehow it so happened that they were not submitting the tax amount that they were supposed to submit to the Muslim king. So the Muslim king gets very angry, and he sends his guards to arrest his father and uncle. And his father and uncle run away. And so they arrest this Raghunath Das. He was a small boy. Imagine his father and uncle has run away. They have not deposited the tax. It's a serious offense. And he has been arrested. And now what can this boy do? He's a young boy. But he was a devotee of Lord Chaitanya. And so Prabhupada mentioned he handles the situation so well that he, by his sweet talks and by his logic and by his explanation, he manages to convince the governor that we are all family friends, we are all relatives, I am your brother, why? We'll settle up all these things. And he managed the whole situation very well. So Prabhupada is writing, so he handled the matter, Raghunath Das, in such a nice way that the matter was settled between the minister and his father. So the idea is that he was a Vaishnava, that although he was a Vaishnava, he was not a fool how to manage a state. It does not mean that a Vaishnava will be a fool and a rascal because he is a Vaishnava. No. He will get all. Krishna will bless him. That is why Krishna says, Dadami buddhi yogam tam. If you become a devotee, all kinds of intelligence will come and reside. Because Krishna knows that you are in the material world and he knows your requirements, he knows your needs. And everything Krishna will supply. So this brings us to the second quality, that is, first is akinchana, the second is we must depend on Krishna. A devotee, if we have our own plans, and if we have, so Prabhupada gives a very nice example of the child and the father. The father has made all arrangements for the child. And he has a plan for the child. And only when the child is completely dependent on the father will be happy, will see that yes, this child is dependent on me, and the father will take full care of the child. Even when the child grows up, when the child is an obedient son, the father will be very pleased and he has made all arrangements for the child. So, Prabhupada is writing, intelligent persons, they will not ask anything from Krishna, just like a dependent child. He is fully dependent on the father. So, father knows how to raise him, how to be a perfect man. He knows what his necessities are. Similarly, we have to give ourselves up to the care of Krishna without any condition. That is perfect life. Completely depending on Krishna. Not asking anything from Krishna. And the third, so that is being, first one was being akinchana, second is being dependent on the Lord, and the third is practicing austerities. This is what Vishwarupa, he had practiced a lot of austerities and tapasya and penance, and so Lord Brahma had told, you go and surrender to Vishwarupa. He has a lot of punya by his austerities and he will help you. So as devotees also, we must practice austerities and tapasya because austerities purify our heart. Like Rishabhadeva said to his sons, that tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam shuddhet, heart will become cleansed, heart will become purified by practicing austerities. And we have some very simple austerities to practice, rising early in the morning, chanting 16 rounds, taking morning bath, attending them. All our austerities are actually centered around devotional service. So austerity, the goal of austerity is service to Krishna. The goal of austerity is Krishna consciousness. The goal of austerity is not to attain some power or some material opulence or some material power. No. Aradhito yadi haris tapasa tata kim. Naradhito yadi haris tapasa tata kim. Tapasa, you are doing tapasya. If you are doing worship of Krishna, that is the highest tapasya. There is no need of any other higher tapasya. And if you're not doing, if you are not engaged in devotional service, then all other so-called tapasya, we may be doing, like sometimes some people say, I'm doing this vrata, I'm doing that vrata, I'm doing Somvar vrata, or all that is good, but it is only at a material plane. The real goal of tapasya is to gain the favor of Lord Krishna. And then further it says, Antar bahir yadi haris tapasa tata kim, na antar bahir yadi haris tapasa tata kim. The goal of tapasya is to have Lord Krishna residing within our heart. If that is not happening, then all the tapasyas is useless. That's why if you see, all the tapasyas in Krishna consciousness in our life is all aimed towards furthering our devotional service. We follow Ekadashi to please Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted devotees to follow Ekadashi. Ekadashi purifies. So it's not simply fasting for some recognition. It is fasting to please the Lord. So these are the things that is being mentioned here. A Brahmana must aspire to practice these qualities. He must practice austerity. He must be completely dependent on the Lord, and he must be completely free from all material possessions. Namo akinchana vittaya. So, Vishwarupa, when Indra and all the devatas come to approach him, Vishwarupa is explaining these things to Indra, that, this is what is, a Brahmana should not be after any material possession. You are telling me to accept your priesthood. I can accept, but then that's not the, that's a low quality Brahmana. But later we will see how, in spite of explaining to Indra that a Brahmana is supposed to be so exalted that he should not be having some material desires, he still accepts to become their priest because out of obligation, out of risk, because the devatas have come, and no ordinary devatas have come. Indra has come, and Indra has been directed by Brahma. So sometimes out of obligations, you have to accept something, because finally it is for the good of all the devatas. So that's how Vishwarupa will be benefited, that he's doing something to benefit the devatas who are saintly person. And finally we will see he will accept their proposal. And then later the story will unfold how he helps the devatas win back their kingdom. So these are the few things. We will stop here. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanand.